He's just a servant," my future son-in-law declared with icy contempt to 200 wedding guests, pointing at me like I was invisible. The crowd nodded in agreement, but then someone gasped, "Wait, I've seen him on Forbes." Every mouth in that ballroom dropped open, and Brandon's champagne glass shattered against the marble floor. But before I reveal how this billionaire brought down his arrogant son-in-law, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. 3 weeks earlier, Rebecca burst through my corner office door like a hurricane, her face glowing with pure euphoria. I was deep in a heated conference call with Tokyo investors about our $847 million acquisition deal, but the sight of my daughter's breathless excitement made me instantly in the conversation. "Gentlemen, we'll resume this tomorrow morning." I clicked off the secure line. "Dad, I'm engaged," Rebecca practically screamed, thrusting her left hand toward me. The 3-carat diamond caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting tiny rainbows across my mahogany executive desk. My Mont Blanc pen froze mid-signature. Engaged. The word felt foreign rolling off my tongue. "When did this happen?" I asked, studying her radiant face carefully. "Yesterday evening. Brandon proposed in Bryant Park during sunset. It was absolutely perfect, Dad. He prepared this beautiful speech about our future together, our dreams, everything." She collapsed into the leather client chair across from my desk, her designer outfit a stark contrast to the corporate atmosphere surrounding us. I observed her closely. Rebecca had mentioned Brandon sporadically over the past 8 months, but I knew virtually nothing about him beyond his first name and general profession. "Tell me about him again," I said, leaning back in my chair. Brandon Wellington. He works in investment banking at Sterling Associates." Rebecca's nervous laugh made me lean forward slightly. "He's incredible, Dad, ambitious, charming, everything I've ever dreamed of. And his family." Something flickered across her expression. "They're wonderful people. Actually, that's why I'm here." She twisted the engagement ring around her finger anxiously. "They've invited us for dinner tonight at 6. Brandon wants to meet you properly. You know, father to future son-in-law." I moved to the massive window, watching Manhattan buzz 49 floors below like a living organism. "What aren't you telling me, sweetheart?" Rebecca avoided my penetrating gaze. "It's just, could you maybe not mention the company or those Forbes articles? Brandon's parents are very humble, down-to-earth people, and I don't want them feeling intimidated or uncomfortable." There it was. The request I'd been anticipating since Rebecca turned 18 and started dating seriously. Hide the wealth, pretend to be ordinary, let them judge us based on complete deception. "You want me to lie about who I am?" I asked quietly. "Not lie exactly, just downplay things a bit. Drive the Toyota instead of the Bentley. We're something casual and approachable." Her voice carried that pleading tone I hadn't heard since she was 12 and desperately wanted a puppy. I returned to my desk, opening the bottom drawer where I kept emergency checks pre-signed for immediate use. "Rebecca, if this man truly loves you, shouldn't he accept every aspect of your life without condition? He does love me, but first impressions matter tremendously, and Brandon's family values hard work and genuine honesty above everything else. They might think I'm some spoiled rich girl if they knew the truth." The irony wasn't lost on me. She wanted them to witness her honesty while building the entire introduction on elaborate deception. I wrote a check for exactly $73,000 and handed it to her. "What's this for?" "Wedding expenses. Consider an engagement gift." I studied her reaction with the precision of a scientist. "Where exactly are we having this dinner?" Rebecca's face lit up like Christmas morning as she folded the check carefully. 247 Oak Street in Brooklyn Heights. It's Brandon's family home. His parents are Thomas and Catherine Wellington. 6 o'clock sharp. She stood and kissed my forehead gently. "Thank you for understanding, Dad. This means absolutely everything to me." After she left, I stared at the address written on my notepad, wheels turning in my mind. I remembered Elizabeth's wisdom about character revealing itself when people think nobody important is watching. Perhaps it was time for a different kind of test entirely. I loosened my Italian silk tie and unbuttoned my custom jacket, the weight of Rebecca's request settling over me like a familiar burden. The Tokyo conference equipment still blinked red on my desk, a constant reminder of the technological empire I'd built from absolutely nothing. Turning to face the floor to ceiling windows, I caught my reflection against the Manhattan skyline, the same face that had graced 3 Forbes covers. But underneath lay memories of a desperate 26-year-old with $347 in his pocket and a revolutionary AI algorithm that would change everything. Elizabeth's photograph smiled at me from its sterling silver Tiffany frame. "What would you do, my love?" I whispered to the empty office. I remembered those brutal early days vividly, sleeping on a futon in my first cramped office, surviving on instant ramen and determination, writing code 18 hours straight while Elizabeth brought me coffee and unwavering encouragement. She believed in neurotech when venture capitalists laughed me out of their boardrooms. Character shows when people think nobody important is watching, she used to say with that knowing smile. Money doesn't change who someone truly is, Harrison. It just reveals it. The drive to my penthouse gave me precious time to think. Park Avenue's familiar elegance couldn't calm the storm brewing in my chest. Rebecca deserved happiness, but she also deserved protection from those who might see her as a prize rather than a person. Inside my 4,200 square foot sanctuary overlooking Central Park, I found myself gravitating toward Elizabeth's jewelry box on the bedroom dresser. Her engagement ring still lay in its velvet slot, a modest solitaire I'd saved 4 months to afford. She'd treasured it more than any diamond I could buy her later. The wall safe behind the Monet held my most precious documents: our wedding photos, Rebecca's first crayon drawing, Elizabeth's final letter. But today I needed something else entirely. In my walk-in closet, behind rows of handmade Italian suits, hung a garment I'd completely forgotten existed, a cheap Target suit purchased years ago for a charity event where executives dressed down to understand poverty firsthand. I'd worn it once, despised every polyester thread, but kept it anyway. Now it might serve a far greater purpose. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Brandon Wellington's LinkedIn profile. Investment banking at a mid-tier firm, modest achievements, ambitious language about leveraging synergies and optimizing portfolios. Nothing spectacular, nothing that screamed gold digger, but nothing that impressed either. The Forbes article about me was ridiculously easy to find. Tech visionary Harrison Cole, from startup to $3.7 billion empire. The photograph showed me in my usual confident pose. The caption mentioning my philanthropic foundation and status as a widower raising Rebecca alone. If Brandon had done even basic homework, he knew exactly who Rebecca's father was. But did his family? I walked to the private garage where my collection waited. The Bentley, Tesla Model S Plaid, Porsche 911 Turbo, and tucked in the corner like an embarrassed relative, my 2009 Toyota Camry, 186,000 miles of deliberately maintained mediocrity. Elizabeth's voice echoed in my memory. The best way to know someone's heart is to see how they treat those they think can't help them. The sun cast long shadows across the garage floor. My phone chimed. 4:47 p.m. Time to become someone else entirely. The Target suit felt alien against my skin after years of Italian tailoring. Polyester clung where silk would flow, and the slightly wrinkled fabric spoke of storage rather than care. I discovered it buried behind formal wear, still bearing its original $89.99 tags, despite one wearing at that forgettable charity gala. Standing before my bedroom mirror, I methodically transformed myself piece by piece. The Patek Philippe came off first, replaced by a $29 Casio with a plastic band showing the wrong time zone. My Hermes briefcase gave way to a canvas messenger bag with authentic coffee stains I'd borrowed from building maintenance. The iPhone 14 Pro went into my safe, replaced by an ancient Samsung Galaxy that barely held a charge. I practiced hunching my shoulders slightly, shortening my confident stride, lowering my voice to match the blue-collar accent I'd absorbed from contractors and delivery workers over the years. Harrison Cole, retired plumber. I murmured to my reflection. Modest pension, proud of my daughter's success. Elizabeth's jewelry box watched silently as I removed platinum credit cards from my wallet, keeping only a basic debit card and exactly $63 in cash. The transformation felt both theatrical and deeply personal, stripping away layers of wealth to reveal something closer to my forgotten origins. My walk-in closet, larger than most Manhattan studio apartments, suddenly seemed absolutely absurd. Rows of handmade shoes, designer suits, watches worth more than houses, all meaningless if they couldn't protect Rebecca from making a catastrophic mistake. The elevator descended to the garage level where James, our 62-year-old concierge, was reviewing evening deliveries with military precision. His eyes widened when he saw me, professional training battling obvious confusion. "Good evening, Mr. Cole." His voice carried 23 years of absolute discretion. "Will you be needing the Bentley tonight?" "The Toyota, actually." I pulled out the keys to the Camry, watching James's face remain perfectly neutral despite the bizarre request. "Could you warm up for me?" "Of course, sir. Shall I have it detailed first?" "That won't be necessary, James. And if anyone asks, you didn't see me leave in anything unusual tonight." James nodded solemnly. "I rarely see anything unusual, Mr. Cole. Have a pleasant evening." But that was just the beginning of what would become the most important performance of my entire life. The Camry's interior smelled of vanilla air freshener and worn leather. Compared to my other vehicles, it felt like stepping into a completely different existence. The AM/FM radio crackled to life, playing classic rock instead of the satellite systems I was accustomed to. I adjusted the rearview mirror and caught my reflection again. The expensive haircut still showed, but everything else screamed ordinary middle-class American, the kind of man Brandon Wellington's family would either welcome warmly or dismiss entirely. GPS navigation spoke in its mechanical voice. "Proceed to 247 Oak Street, Brooklyn Heights. Estimated travel time, 22 minutes. 22 minutes to cross not just boroughs, but entire social worlds." I gripped the Camry's worn steering wheel and pulled out of the garage, leaving my real life behind in the shadows of Park Avenue. The Holland Tunnel stretched ahead, carrying me toward what might be the most crucial test of my daughter's future happiness. The radio played on as Manhattan's glittering skyline disappeared in my rearview mirror, and Harrison the billionaire became Harrison the plumber, driving toward a truth that might shatter everything. What I discovered that night would shock me to my core. The Toyota's engine ticked softly as I squeezed into a parking space between a Tesla Model Y and a BMW X3. 247 Oak Street looked exactly like I'd expected a renovated Brooklyn Heights brownstone trying desperately to project success. The fresh paint on the front steps showed recent DIY work, slightly uneven but determined. I checked the crumpled paper one final time. 6 p.m. sharp. My cheap Casio read exactly that. The doorbell rang with an expensive Westminster chime, though I noticed it was mounted slightly crooked. Footsteps approached from inside, and the door swung open to reveal a man who could only be Brandon Wellington. "You must be Rebecca's father." His smile was practiced, professional. "Brandon Wellington. Absolute pleasure to meet you, sir." His handshake was firm but brief. I caught him discreetly wiping his palm on his pants afterward. The $180 shirt he wore wasn't designer, but it was trying desperately to look like it. Everything about him screamed calculated presentation. "Harrison Cole, thanks for having me over." I kept my voice humble, adding just a touch of the blue-collar accent I practiced. Come in, come in. Rebecca's been telling us wonderful things about you." The interior hit me immediately. New furniture with that distinct chemical smell of recent financing. Decorative elements clearly chosen from department store catalogs. A massive 75-inch TV dominating the living room like a shrine to material priorities. Mom, Dad, this is Harrison. Brandon's voice carried toward the kitchen. Catherine Wellington appeared, wiping her hands on an apron with theatrical precision. Her scanning gaze absorbed my Target suit, scuffed shoes, and canvas messenger bag in approximately 3 seconds. The smile that followed didn't quite reach her calculating eyes. How lovely to meet you, Harrison. I hope you found the place without too much trouble. GPS got me here just fine, ma'am. Beautiful neighborhood you've got here. Well, it's certainly up and coming. Her tone suggested she considered herself instrumental in that improvement. Thomas Wellington emerged from the living room, the TV volume lowered but still audible. He offered a perfunctory nod in my direction before focusing entirely on Rebecca, who had just appeared from the kitchen. Rebecca, sweetheart, you look absolutely radiant. Engagement suits you perfectly. I watched the family dynamics unfold like a carefully choreographed performance. Thomas's expensive casual clothes, clearly his best outfit. Catherine's costume jewelry, designed to look like inherited pieces. Brandon's cologne, just slightly too strong, marking territory. Little did they know, they were about to face a test that would expose everything. Please sit down. Catherine gestured toward what was obviously the least comfortable chair, the one with the slightly wobbly leg that guests always got stuck with. The living room showcased their priorities perfectly. Books displayed, but never read. Dust on the spines, proving their purely decorative purpose. Generic brand items partially hidden behind carefully placed name brand facades. Everything designed to impress visitors. Nothing reflecting genuine taste or family history. So, Harrison, Brandon settled into his obvious favorite chair, establishing immediate dominance. Rebecca mentioned you're retired. What line of work were you in? Plumbing mostly. Did some general contracting work too. I shifted uncomfortably in the wobbly chair, staying perfectly in character. Honest work, you know. Brandon's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the look of a man confirming his assumptions about social hierarchy. Skilled trades. Very practical. The condescension in that word, practical, was perfectly calibrated. Not quite an insult, but definitely a categorization. Rebecca tells us you work in investment banking. I offered, deliberately mispronouncing investment slightly. That's correct. Sterling Associates. We handle portfolio optimization for high net worth individuals. His explanation had the patronizing air of someone speaking to a child. Complex financial instruments, merger facilitation, that sort of sophisticated work. I nodded earnestly as if he'd just explained quantum physics. Sounds real important. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably on the couch, her nervous laugh filling the awkward silence. Dad's always been great with numbers too, haven't you, Dad? Well, I could balance my own checkbook. I chuckled self-deprecatingly. The family exchanged one of those meaningful glances people think are subtle. Catherine's lips pressed together in what might have been sympathy or satisfaction. Dinner should be ready shortly, Catherine announced, rising with practiced hostess grace. I hope you like pot roast, Harrison. It's a treasured family recipe. Sounds wonderful, ma'am. I truly appreciate the hospitality. As we moved toward the dining room, I caught Brandon's satisfied expression reflected in the darkened window. He thought he'd successfully established the pecking order. He had absolutely no idea how right he was, just not in the way he imagined. But what happened next would change everything. Harrison, you'll sit here. Catherine directed me to the chair that immediately wobbled under my weight. The dining room continued the brownstone's theme of expensive-looking affordability. Mismatched china trying to pass for a complete set. Silverware polished, but clearly from different decades. Wine glasses being used for water in an attempt at sophistication. The centerpiece looked elaborate until you realized it came from a craft store, and the dimmed lighting was meant to create ambience, but mostly hid the synthetic quality of everything around us. This looks incredible, Mrs. Wellington. You shouldn't have gone to all this trouble. Oh, it's nothing fancy, Catherine demurred, though her pleased expression suggested otherwise. Just a simple family meal. Brandon uncorked a wine bottle with ceremonial precision. This is a 2018 Cabernet from Napa Valley. Excellent vintage, very well regarded in wine circles. His explanation was clearly directed at me, assuming I need basic wine education. Sounds expensive, I offered, watching him pour with practiced superiority. Well, when you know what to look for. Brandon's smile was patronizing perfection. Thomas raised his glass with authority. To Brandon and Rebecca's future together, and of families coming together despite different backgrounds. The toast hung in the air like a challenge. Rebecca's face flushed crimson, but she lifted her glass with the rest of us. So, Harrison, Brandon began cutting his roast with surgical precision. Retirement must be nice. No more crawling under sinks, am I right? Had my share of tight spaces, that's for sure. I deliberately used the wrong fork for my salad. But honest work's honest work. Absolutely. Brandon agreed with the tone of someone humoring a confused child. Physical labor certainly has its dignity. Of course, in my line of work, we focus more on leveraging intellectual capital. Last week alone, I facilitated a merger worth $73,000 in fees to our firm. I nodded respectfully, though internally I noted that $73,000 was pocket change for a normal business lunch in my world. That's real impressive. Brandon has such wonderful connections, Catherine chimed in. He dines at Lou Bernardine regularly with clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were name-dropping a restaurant where I could buy a private table for the entire year without checking my account balance. Rebecca tells us you're quite accomplished. Thomas addressed my daughter while effectively ignoring my presence. Graphic design, very creative field. Thank you, Mr. Wellington. I absolutely love what I do. Of course, once you're married, priorities naturally change, Catherine added with meaningful emphasis. Brandon will provide excellently. You might not need to work at all. Rebecca's fork paused halfway to her mouth. I enjoy my career. Well, naturally, dear, but there are different kinds of fulfillment. Catherine's tone was maternal but firm. Brandon understands what it takes to maintain a proper lifestyle. Brandon nodded sagely. Financial planning is absolutely crucial. Generational wealth doesn't build itself. He glanced directly at me. I imagine that's not something your family has much experience with, Harrison. Can't say it is. I agreed mildly, suppressing the urge to mention my portfolio could purchase his entire neighborhood. That's exactly why Rebecca is so fortunate, Brandon continued with growing confidence. She'll never have to worry about limitations again. The word limitations hit Rebecca like a physical blow. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, hurt, then something approaching horrified recognition. But they had no idea what was coming next. More roast? Harrison? Catherine offered, clearly uncomfortable with the tension she'd helped create. This is delicious, ma'am. You're a wonderful cook. My genuine appreciation seemed to surprise her. Well, I do try to keep things nice. She glanced around her dining room with visible pride. We believe presentation matters tremendously. Brandon showed me photos of the places he takes clients, Thomas added with obvious pride. Very upscale establishments, the kind of places where they recognize quality. Brandon preened under his father's praise. Image is everything in my business. Clients need to see success to feel confident in your abilities. Makes perfect sense, I nodded agreeably. Trust is important. Exactly. Though I suppose in your line of work, Harrison, the clientele wasn't quite as discerning. Rebecca's knuckles had gone white around her fork. Rebecca's moving up in the world now, Brandon announced with a satisfied smile. The phrase, moving up, seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Even Thomas looked uncomfortable with his son's directness. Coffee in the living room? Catherine suggested quickly, rising to clear plates. Sounds perfect, Brandon agreed, standing and straightening his shirt with obvious satisfaction. As we moved toward the living room, I caught Rebecca's expression, a mixture of deep embarrassment and dawning realization that was genuinely painful to witness. The evening was reaching its natural conclusion, but the real test was just beginning. What happened next shocked everyone in that room. Thomas's photo album lay open on the coffee table like a sacred text. "This is my pride and joy," he announced proudly, pointing to pictures of a 12-year-old Cadillac. Leather seats, premium sound system, all the luxury features you could want. He detailed each photograph with the enthusiasm of someone showing off a rare artifact, completely unaware that his luxury features were now standard in economy cars. "Very nice vehicle," I offered diplomatically. "Cost me $41,000 when it was brand new," Thomas continued with obvious pride. Of course, that was real money back then. Brandon settled into his designated throne with obvious satisfaction. "Harrison, I want you to know I take my responsibilities very seriously. Rebecca will never want for anything." His tone carried the weight of a royal decree. "I understand her background might make this transition challenging, but I'm fully committed to elevating her lifestyle appropriately." Rebecca's sharp intake of breath was audible across the room. "I'll make sure she has access to the right social circles, proper cultural experiences," Brandon continued, completely oblivious to his fiancé's growing distress. Someone from her background couldn't be expected to navigate these waters alone. That was the exact moment Rebecca's face truly changed. The love-struck optimism I'd witnessed all evening finally cracked, revealing something raw and painful underneath. "We should go," she said quietly, standing abruptly. "Oh, leaving so soon?" Catherine's disappointment seemed genuine. "I was hoping we'd have more time to get properly acquainted." I stood slowly, the wobbly chair creaking audibly. "Thank you for dinner, Mrs. Wellington. Everything was absolutely delicious." The family's perfunctory goodbyes felt rehearsed ritual politeness, masking their obvious relief. Brandon didn't even walk us to the door, the ultimate disrespect in any social circle I'd ever known. Rebecca retrieved her light sweater from the coat closet without speaking. My cheap jacket hung alone on their expensive coat rack like a surrendered flag. Outside, the cool evening air carried sounds of normal Brooklyn life, couples walking dogs, restaurant patios filled with laughter, the distant hum of traffic from nearby streets. Our Toyota looked even more shabby among the neighborhood's carefully curated vehicles. "Rebecca," I began gently. "Don't." Her voice was tight with controlled emotion. "Just don't start, Dad. Did you hear the way he talked about you? About us?" She whirled around, tears starting. "He loves me, Dad. They're protective of their family." "Protective?" I kept my voice calm despite the rage building inside. "Sweetheart, that man just spent 2 hours explaining how inadequate your father is and how fortunate you are to escape your background. You don't understand." The words exploded out of her. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You judging them judging us, nobody giving anyone a real chance." But what she said next would change everything between us. I gave them a chance, Rebecca. I sat there for 2 hours while they insulted everything about who we are. Who we are. Rebecca's laugh was bitter and cutting. "Dad, you drove here in a 15-year-old car, wearing a Target suit. That's not who we are." The irony hit like a physical blow. "No, it's not. But Brandon doesn't know that. And look how he treated me anyway. He was nervous. Meeting parents is incredibly stressful." "Rebecca, listen to yourself. You're making excuses for someone who just told an entire dinner table that you're moving up in the world by marrying him." "Maybe I am." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Maybe this is my chance to build something better." "Better than what?" "Better than me." The question hung between us like a sword. Rebecca's face crumpled, but her voice remained defiant. "Better than hiding who I am because you think money corrupts everyone. Better than pretending to be something I'm not because you can't trust me to make my own decisions." "This isn't about trust, sweetheart. This is about character." "His character?" "No, Dad. This is about control." Tears were flowing freely now. You can't stand that I chose someone you didn't personally select. You can't stand that I might love someone who doesn't worship at the altar of your approval. Rebecca, I'm 28 years old. I'm not your little girl anymore. And Brandon is not some gold digger you need to test and approve. If you marry him, you'll spend the rest of your life apologizing for who you used to be. And if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I gave up my happiness to make you feel better about being alone. The words hit like a physical assault. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth, but it was too late. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean that. But she had meant it, and we both knew it. If you can't support my decision, then maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding. She ran toward the house, her footsteps echoing off the concrete steps. The front door closed with finality, leaving me alone under the streetlight beside my disguised car. But this was far from over. Inside the Toyota, I sat in complete silence, processing what had just happened. The worn seats, the basic radio, the work receipts scattered on the dashboard, all props in a performance that had revealed more truth than I'd bargained for. My phone showed 9:27 p.m. The test was over, but the real consequences were just beginning. 3 weeks later, the next 21 days passed in a blur of professional obligations and personal torment. Board meetings continued, acquisition deals progressed. The NeuroTech empire hummed along perfectly, but my heart wasn't in any of it. Starting June 18th, I called Rebecca every day morning, lunch, evening. Her phone went straight to voicemail each time, the telltale sign of a blocked number. My messages grew increasingly desperate. The flower delivery attempt on June 20th was equally futile. 4 dozen white roses, her favorite since childhood, returned to the shop with a delivery refused notation. The handwritten note I'd included came back unopened. Desperate for any connection to my daughter's life, I found myself checking her Instagram account obsessively. She'd never made it private, probably never imagining her father would resort to social media stalking. The posts were a catalog of wedding preparations, dress fittings, venue tastings, bridal shower photos with friends I'd watched grow up. Brandon featured prominently in every image, his arm around Rebecca's waist, his smile proprietary and satisfied. There were no mentions of me anywhere. It was as if I'd been completely erased from her wedding narrative. But I had one final card to play. On June 5th, wedding day, I woke at 7 a.m. to perfect weather. Through my bedroom windows, Central Park sparkled in morning sunlight, the kind of flawless day Rebecca had always dreamed of for her wedding. I showered, shaved, and dressed with the precision of a general preparing for battle. The Armani suit fit like a second skin. The Patek Philippe caught light from the window. The Italian leather shoes reflected the marble floor. In the mirror, I saw Harrison Cole as the world knew him: successful, powerful, uncompromising. The kind of man who didn't take no for an answer, even from his own daughter. Especially from his own daughter. The Plaza Hotel's Fifth Avenue entrance welcomed me like an old friend. Other wedding guests were arriving in their luxury vehicles: BMWs, Lexuses, Teslas, designer gowns, expensive suits. The carefully curated appearance of success. But none of them carried themselves with the quiet confidence that came from actual wealth rather than its imitation. At the security checkpoint, the guard's fingers scrolled down his iPad. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see that name on our registry. There must be some mistake. I'm a bride's father. I understand this is difficult, sir, but my instructions are very clear. Only guests on the approved list may enter." The humiliation of being turned away publicly stung more than I'd expected. Here I was, in my own element, at a hotel where I'd donated hundreds of thousands of dollars, being refused entry to my daughter's wedding. But I had friends in high places. 20 minutes later, I was inside the grand ballroom through a service entrance, watching Rebecca marry Brandon in front of 200 guests. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over elegant attire and elaborate floral arrangements worth more than most people's annual salaries. Even from my position at the ballroom's periphery, I could see her happiness, the joy that made her practically glow. You may now kiss the bride. Brandon lifted Rebecca's veil and kissed her with theatrical passion, clearly performing for their audience. Applause erupted throughout the ballroom as my daughter officially became Mrs. Rebecca Wellington. But then our eyes met across the room. Brandon's confident stride across the ballroom floor cut through the cocktail hour chatter like a blade. His tuxedo was perfectly pressed, his smile predatory, his eyes locked on mine with growing fury. "What the hell are you doing here?" Rick's voice carried enough venom to stop conversations within a 10-foot radius. I remained perfectly still, hands clasped behind my back. The Armani suit felt like armor. "I believe this is my daughter's wedding. Your daughter explicitly told you not to come." "Security." Brandon spun around, looking for assistance. "This man is trespassing." A crowd began forming. Wedding guests turned their attention from small talk to unfolding drama. "This is Rebecca's father," Brandon announced loudly. "The plumber I told you about. He's been banned from this wedding." That's when Andrew Steinberg dropped his champagne glass. The crystal shattered against marble with a sound that cut through the ballroom noise. Andrew, a prominent tech investor, stood frozen, staring at me with recognition dawning across his face. "Oh my God," he whispered, then louder. "Harrison Cole from NeuroTech." Brandon turned toward the voice, confusion replacing aggression. "What?" Andrew pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, scrolling rapidly. Forbes magazine. Tech Visionary of the Year. Harrison Cole, founder and CEO of NeuroTech AI. Net worth $3.7 billion. The crowd's murmur grew explosive. More phones appeared, screens glowing as guests began their own searches. "That's impossible," Brandon stammered, his face draining of color. "He's a plumber. He drives a beat-up Toyota. He lives in Brooklyn." I finished quietly, "in a penthouse that overlooks the bridge I crossed to visit your family's home 3 weeks ago." What happened next was pure justice. The broken champagne glass crunched under Andrew's shoe as he stepped closer, his phone screen displaying my Forbes cover photo. The artificial intelligence pioneer, the man who revolutionized predictive analytics. "You're actually here." Around us, search results were spreading like wildfire. Guests showed each other screens, whispered confirmations, recorded videos. The elegant wedding reception was transforming into something else entirely. This can't." Brandon's hand shook as he reached for my arm. "Please, Mr. Cole, sir. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." I took a single step backward, maintaining my dignity as his desperation became apparent to everyone watching. "No misunderstanding, Brandon. You showed me exactly who you are. The only question now is whether Rebecca sees it too." Brandon dropped to his knees on the marble floor, glass shards surrounding him like fallen stars. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. If I had known who you were, if you had known I was wealthy, you would have treated me with respect." My voice carried across the ballroom, clear and final. "That tells me everything I need to know about your character." From across the room, I caught sight of Rebecca turning toward the commotion, her wedding dress flowing behind her as she moved through the parting crowd. The moment of truth had finally arrived. "Dad," her voice cut through the ballroom noise like a knife through silk. The crowd fell completely silent. Rebecca stood at the edge of the circle, taking in the scene. Her new husband on his knees, broken glass scattered around him, guests holding phones displaying my Forbes profile, and me standing calmly in the center of it all. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I looked at my daughter, beautiful in her wedding dress, radiant despite the chaos surrounding her, and felt my heart break and heal simultaneously. "I came to see my daughter get married," I said simply, even if she didn't want me here. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears as understanding washed over her face. "You're not a plumber. I never was, sweetheart. I just wanted to see what kind of man you were marrying." And then, the most beautiful moment of all. "I'm so sorry, Dad." The words rushed out. I should have listened. I should have trusted your judgment. My arms opened automatically as she reached me, and suddenly I was holding my daughter again, wedding dress and all. The expensive fabric crushed between us, but neither of us cared. I love you, I whispered into her hair. That's all that matters. The crowd seemed to exhale collectively, some wiping away tears at the father-daughter reunion. 1 year later, Rebecca filed for divorce. Brandon's true character had revealed itself completely, just as I knew it would. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your children is showing them the truth, even when they don't want to see it. Character always reveals itself when people think nobody important is watching. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe for more incredible true stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to protect someone you love from their own bad judgment? Let me know your story.